Accept that responsibility is a 100-100 and not a 50-50. The status quo likes to convince you of this idea that it's 50-50, that you have that it's my responsibility to 50% and it's your responsibility to 50%. But this is not the case. The reality is that it is 100% your responsibility and it's 100% my responsibility, even between you and I. Like, let's not take something complicated like your job or the environment or your financial situation or your other relationships. Let's just take you and I. It's 100% my responsibility to put out a product that makes you take action. Okay? It's also 100% your responsibility to take action on that thing. This is a shared deal, but it's a 100-100, not a 50-50. I'm not going to go halfway, and you're not going to go halfway, otherwise nothing happens. But if I do my absolute gut-wrenching best to get you to take action, and you do your absolute gut-wrenching best to take action on the things that we're talking about, really great things happen. It's not a 50-50 deal. It's a 100-100 deal. Let's take a more dramatic example just to make it, to add a story to this. Let's say you're standing toe-to-toe with, let's say that we're standing toe-to-toe and you punch me in the face. Was it your responsibility that you threw the punch? Yes. Was it my responsibility that I got punched? Yes. Was it your responsibility that you landed the punch? Yes. 100-100. It's both. Okay? And to think otherwise would be to render yourself powerless. Like, think of what it would be like to remain the victim and say, you punched me in the face. Why did you do that? That's your fault. It's not my fault that I got hit. Well, if I did take that scenario and said that it's not my fault that I got hit, that renders me powerless, which is not accurate. I could have ducked, I could have dipped, I could have dodged, I could have blocked, right? You have power over your scenario. There is no scenario where you do not have power. Okay? Even if you did take a person who was oppressed, victimized, jailed, beaten, and let's say if they ran away, they got shot. Let's take the worst of humanity, the worst situation possible. What's it going to help them a real victim, not the bullshit victim that we try to come up with today, but a real victim. Let's look at them and analyze them and try to come up with a reason for why it would be good for them to consider themselves a victim and powerless over the scenario. Who would that help? Would it help them, the victim, or would it help the oppressor and the perpetrator? It only helps the perpetrator to consider the victim helpless and powerless. And I realize that's hard to think of, but at the same time, why would you rip away hope and power and responsibility from the people who need it the most? And why would you give it to the people who are trying to hurt and manipulate and do bad things to these people? Man, it is their responsibility that they did those things. No doubt about it. It's awful and terrible and mean and nasty. It's the worst of humanity. But at the same time, let's look over here at these people. It does not help them to think of themselves as powerless. The victim, it does not help them to think of themselves as powerless. Does not help them to not have hope. It does not help them to not think, how can I take power over my scenario? How can I do something? How can I keep hope? How can I remain powerful in this scenario? Because the more power that they gave away, the less power that they actually had. Do you see what I'm saying? This is a tough concept for people to take because nobody really wants to take on responsibility for the bad things that happen in their life. But if you don't take on the responsibility for all the bad shit, how are you going to take responsibility for all the good stuff? You know, you're on a football team and the football team wins the state championship and you're like, well, I didn't do anything on that. Well, that sucks. Whereas, like, it's not my fault that we lost is the same thing. You can't say it's not my fault that we lost and then say it's all that I was part of the championship team. It's both. It's both. You have a responsibility. What can I do? What can I do? I could have, if you throw the punch, I let you hit me. Not you hit me, and it's your fault. I let you hit me. It's my fault that I let you hit me. That's the 100-100. You want 100% of this thing. It is not a 50-50 deal. You want to take 100%. Okay? As much responsibility as you possibly can. That's what we're talking about here. It's the clarity of responsibility that we're going to get into next. But for this, start thinking of how you can take 100% responsibility for everything that happens. And this gets a little jarred up at some point. This is very, very tough to get clear on. So don't underestimate this obstacle that is there, because responsibility is a very difficult thing to do, and it takes a ton of practice. So don't underestimate this thing. Overestimate the amount of action that you're going to have to take to be able to conquer it.